comment in here, Darach. Moaning Honan on to knock Limerick from P-Well. Patrick 74.
P-Well 74, that Kieran, is it?
That's probably Kieran. Yeah. You know, like, just to jump over to Limerick for a second, their first few games, obviously they weren't that impressive against Waterford, but still won with 14 men. And obviously Clare beat them the last day around. Do you think that Limerick are building towards back being to where they were at, or are there problems?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think P-Well 74 has it wrong there. I'd actually be pretty confident in Limerick's chances. That was one. I'd be pretty confident in Limerick's chances this weekend, and I'd still have them down if I was calling the All-Ireland winner. I'd have Limerick down as it at the moment.
Build them up to break them down, boy.
Look, I said that at the start of the year. Look, I think they have the best team. They were probably disappointing, in their performance against against Waterford in first day, and they kind of limped over the line, but they were a man down, and they just didn't look like they were, championship ready. Even against Clare, I thought Clare played a lot better than them, but still only won the game by a point. And if you take it that, they kept themselves in a game that, they were being outplayed in, and they didn't take maybe the chances that they could have taken, and they could have still won the game. So against, a team that has been pretty close to them in the last couple of years anyway. So I think Limerick are still very well positioned. They've had that 2-week break now building into this game, and they'll have been planning for this game. So I'd expect a big performance out of them. And if they can get over the line in Munster and, build a bit of momentum up, they'll be very, very hard to beat, if they do get into Croke Park later on in the year.
They just need to survive, Darach, don't they, really? They need to survive Munster, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think they will. I think they will. They'll win. I think they'll do enough to get out. And I think, as they're getting more, the way they've probably structured their training, they're looking to win All-Ireland. It's different for a Clare, Tipp, or a Cork, or Waterford, where they're doing their utmost to get out of Munster or win a Munster. But Limerick have been there and done that now over the last few years. So they'll have been structuring their training around that and trying to peak later on in the year. And I suppose it's a fine balancing act in that if they do get out, they could beat all around them, but they have to get out first, and I think they will.
We're hoping to have Mark Foley on in a few minutes as well. I hope you sent him the link. You did, good stuff. Right, so Tipperary against Limerick.
I'm going to stop you there. Do you smell blood? Because if every Tipp man doesn't smell blood, there's something wrong. For all the hardship that you've been dealt, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, you literally have an opportunity. Limerick are kind of like a boxer on the ropes in a bit of bother here, and ye boys, you'd want to be smelling blood. I'd say Liam Cattle is smelling blood, and I'd say as the squad smelling blood. This is some glorious opportunity for ye to right all the wrongs of the last 6 years.
Well, look, I think Babs Keaton summed it up best when his Tipperary team were beaten well by Galway in the 06 league. They're dead only to wash them. Look, obviously I'm exaggerating massively. Look, Tipp have a great, if Cork get the job done against Clare, obviously everyone knows that Tipperary can knock Limerick out. But I don't think you can make Tipperary favourites for this game by any stretch of the imagination. There was a bit of the rumour mill earlier this week that Gerard Hegarty, that he's gone off the panel. That seems to be absolute nonsense. John Kiley, I think you were part of the group that was chatting to him last week about how people are no longer, loving Limerick and, their second favourite team and all this kind of stuff, because eventually people get sick of the same team winning.
Yeah.
But I still make Limerick favourites for this team. I know they're down Sean Finn. I know there's been different injury issues with Declan Hannon and Cian Lynch at different times in different matches.
Don't think Cian has done much training now, by all accounts.
And, maybe eventually that kind of takes a toll. Like Michael Fennelly, of course, won Hurler of the Year when he only had 4 training sessions in 2011 throughout the course of the year. Maybe Cian Lynch will do that too. Maybe Hegarty will come back to top form. But there's a lot of question marks over Limerick. So you can't ignore those. But you can't decide all of a sudden that Limerick can go from the all-conquering team to, they lose one game, they're not overly impressive against Waterford, and all of a sudden you start backing against them. They've been battering Tipperary. And normally in the third quarter of games, and then Tipperary maybe steady the ship for the last 15 minutes when the game is gone. I don't see how you can all of a sudden just say Tipperary, or Liam Cahill, I think is bringing the team on massively. But his Waterford team, they lost by 4 points, wasn't it, in that Munster final?
Yeah.
Then the next 2 times they lost by 11. It's not like he has a history of beating and outfoxing Kiley and Kinnerk. So I don't see how you can go against Limerick this weekend.
No, well, I put you this way. Like, I'm looking at the game and I'm kind of thinking 70% of me is thinking, yeah, Limerick are going to be back to themselves. 3-week gap. They'll have up things. They'll maybe, have a few plans in place if teams are getting at them and getting success like they were last time. And then probably about 30% of me is thinking, like, are they realistically on the slide here? They're missing one of the best cornerbacks of all time. There's a few injury doubts. I put there as well, there's very few lads playing well. Do you know what I mean? Like, of their big names, they're not, there's only a handful of them playing well or playing to their optimum. Tom Morrissey probably been one of them. So probably 30% of me is thinking, Jesus, this is some opportunity for Tipp. A Tipp team who are going well and who, if they're able to close down the floodgates in their defence and maybe potentially only concede a goal or two, you're probably thinking, here's the team on the rise, and maybe you're thinking, here's a team on the slide a tiny bit, maybe. So, like if you ask me, during the league, this is a 95% Limerick and a 5% chance Tipp have. But there's and listen, that could all be blown out of the water after this weekend. If Limerick win this weekend, they're back on the horse, and that changes everything. But this is it for them. Like, this is the 4 in a row is here. Like, it's in front of them on Sunday.
Like, Tipperary do want revenge for some of these hammerings
yeah.
that have been doled out to them. Tipp won the 2019 Munster round robin game, but that was a Pyrrhic victory. Like, I think on that day, was it Declan Hannon, Keane Lynch, and one other of the main men were all rested for that game. Tipperary went out and they lost Bonner Maher to a crucial for the rest of the season. Carl Barrett was missing for the Munster final a couple of weeks later when Tipp got absolutely hammered. Even the year beforehand, 2018, Tipp got hammered. So the last 5 matches that have mattered, Tipperary have been beaten well and hammered on occasion here. So Tipperary really want a bit of revenge for that, and they can say they don't all they want, but we all know what it's like in a dressing room. You don't want to keep losing to them. But Tipperary do know they have an out the following week against the Waterford team that, who knows, maybe, there's talks of different lads going off to America, Australia, all that sort of crack. How hard are they training at the moment? Where's their heads at? If anyone's got a niggle, are they really going to are they really going to risk it for a match that doesn't matter? For Limerick, this is do or die. That makes them a very dangerous animal. Like, will nerves come in this for Limerick because they're teetering on the edge of the cliff here? Or will it be like, okay, last year against Clare, went to extra time, we had the nerve. Galway put it up to us, we showed the nerve. All Ireland against Kilkenny, we showed the nerve. You have to go with the notion that Limerick will keep showing the nerve.
You kind of have to go with the notion that they keep showing the nerve until they don't you? And even the Clare game, like, what are we at? Like, I just, it's more of a gut feeling that there's a lot of things just not potentially right with Limerick, and even body language on the pitch maybe wouldn't be compared to other years, but they've lost one game and been beaten by a point in that game. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I'm right in saying it was a point when Kilkenny beat them in 19 as well. Like, they're not going to get blown out, definitely not. But like, if Limerick If Limerick get over this by a point or two at the weekend, that changes everything. But you would say, like, it would be unrealistic to think the Tipp won't end up on 5 points regardless of what happens on Sunday. You'd imagine they'd be in a safe spot. Saying that, if Cork and Clare draw, Cork end up on 4, then it's go to Limerick and get a result. There's just the permutations involved here. I'm sure Limerick will just want to take care of business and get a result, but it's definitely not a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, so my buddy Harry Roberts says, Saint, there's a smashing looking nurse from Clare and has fallen in love with Verney. It's the eyes. Can you help, please? He's a married man.
Married man, Harry.
Adrian McGrath says, Tipp were ahead after 60 plus last year. If that happens this year, will Limerick dog it out? Not so sure. I fancy them to win, but if Tipp get on top, there won't be a comeback. But the problem is, like, even in the league, wasn't it that burst in the third quarter where Limerick had something like, was it 110 to a point or something crazy like that? You had the 16-point turnaround in 2021. Tipp left it too long to empty the bench or didn't find a way for someone to take off their helmet, slow the game down for a few minutes like Offaly did a couple of times last night. It's the right thing to do. You did do it. Obviously, you did it.
The two lads involved both had concussions 2 weeks previous now, I will say.
Yeah, but sure, one of them got a knee in the side.
Yeah, but you take off the helmet to get a drink of water.
Yeah, but anyway, look, the point is that Tipperary should be doing the exact same thing. They should be taking their helmets off because they get a knee in the glute.
Take the sting out of it.
but it has to happen. I mean, if Tipperary are, being hit by a tsunami again, Tipp have to find a way to stop it. Like, people would look at some of the injuries that Limerick have, and rightly so, and say, what can you do without Sean Finn? But like, Tipp are going to be without Jason Ford, so you've got your 9 out of 10 free taker who isn't there. Like, Grode O'Connor's a good free taker, but what you saw is he tired late on against Cork. 1 or 2 frees didn't go his way, and I'm a big fan, like, so that's no slight on him. But Jason Ford won't be playing. You're still without Ger Brown, Paddy Cadell, Craig Morgan, Barry Heffernan. Tipp don't have the depth that they would ordinarily have this year going into the big game. Like, I'm going to bring up the sort of tactics board here to have a little look at how this might match up. And I'm looking at it for Limerick, just the team makes total sense. Assuming to go with this, there's some talk maybe Kyle Hayes go to the forwards, but I think Sean Finn's injury means he probably won't. But Nicky Quaid, best goalkeeper around. Mike Casey, brilliant defender. Dan Morrissey, never let the team down, brilliant. Barry Nash. Now, this is, if Ronan Maher goes spare, he'll go spare. Maybe that won't happen. Maybe there'll be, mano a mano everywhere all over the field. Maybe Dan McCormick will be further up the pitch, whatever. But we'll come to that in a little while. But so Burns, Hannon, Hayes, that makes sense. Will O'Donoghue, Darragh O'Donovan. Now, will Hegarty start, or will it be Cathal O'Neill again? But either way, they're both brilliant players. Cian Lynch, Tom Morrissey, Casey, Flanagan, Gallant. So the whole team is balanced, makes sense. A couple of lads out of form, grand. But from Tipperary point of view, Sean Ryan possibly won't start in this game because it didn't really go his way the last day. Very good player, promising. Came on, got his goal against Clare. Mark Keogh was 1-4 off the bench against Cork, so of course he'll start for Jason Ford. So that means you've got probably Grode O'Connor on the frees. Noel can take them as well. And I'm just then thinking, does Jake Morris go out the wing and maybe Sean Ryan inside, or does Conor Bowe, who was brought on and taken off the last day, does he go wing forward? If Tipperary play like this and Dan McCormick isn't a wing forward, of all the players that Tipperary have options around, which are John McGrath, maybe Bonner Maher, maybe also Seamus Callanan, to me, I think Bowe is the one that makes more sense because you will need energy and enthusiasm, and like, he's got power as well and he can really hurl. It didn't go for him the last day and he was taken back off. But to me, of all the options, like, Bonner struggled big time against Limerick down in the league semi-final. I think John McGrath has kind of been a little bit off colour as well lately. And like, there's only so many players that you can have that don't have the speed and the energy to get around the pitch, even if they have class, against Limerick. So that's, to me, why he makes the most sense of those options. But like, I'm talking question marks around Tipp here. I'm laying out a balanced team for Limerick that makes total sense. And I've got questions with Tipp in different positions.
Yeah, no, totally. The thing about Conor Bowe is interesting. Like, what were the conversations like in the couple of days after the Cork game? Because it is a difficult thing for a player's confidence to come on in a game and be taken off especially in the one half. If you're brought off, 20 brought on after 20 minutes and you come off 65 or something, maybe it's a little bit different. So his head will have to be in the right place if he is starting. But athletically, and if they want to really have the energy, I would say, to take out Limerick, particularly for the first 50, 55 minutes, someone like him will probably need to start. And then you're talking about the finishers. Then you're talking about Callanan to come in and take advantage of a tiring defence. John McGrath to come in, show the bit of class, bit of cuteness. And they're going to need all of those lads. To me, from a Limerick point of view, I think Limerick need to be leading in this one. And I don't think they can afford to be chasing from the start, because Adrian had a good question. Adrian McGrath, with the way Limerick are playing at the moment, are they capable of being 5 or 6 down and dogging it out and clawing it back? I don't think that's
They did in the league semi-final. I mean, that's not long ago.
They did, but there's a fair bit of water under the bridge since then now. And I just wonder, I think they'll try and hit the ground running from the start. I think they'll try and build up a 3 or 4 point buffer and try and keep it in place and maybe control the game. They definitely don't want they don't want to be playing that type of a game they're playing in the league semi-final anyway. They don't, because they're probably a little bit less, there could be potentially a little bit less trust in themselves to find the gears now, just because there's those few seeds of doubt kind of maybe have crept in.
Yeah, well, look, here's the question that I have in terms of, like, will Tipperary have Ronan Maher as the spare man back? I'm not sure which matchup works for Ronan Maher. Is it Hegarty? Because, he's a brilliant hurler, but, covering the ground can be difficult at times. So I think maybe Mark and Cian Lynch might be the one that they have for him, which would maybe put Brian O'Mara on Tom Morrissey. I think Flanagan against Breen makes sense for Tipperary. And even though Gallant is very, very difficult in the air, I think Cathal Barrett of Tipperary's options probably makes the more sense. So if you do move Dan McCormick up the field and you had it a bit more like that, obviously you can see the spaces appearing far more in that Limerick attack now, which is obviously more problematic for Tipperary. And Tipperary have looked like conceding goals. 12 chances coughed up the last 2 games, 7 goals scored. Whereas at the other end, Limerick aren't offering up nearly the same amount of opportunities. But so this is my worry then. If Tipperary do go mano a mano, which is apparently what you need to do to beat Limerick, obviously you can't leave Barry Nash free. Maybe you can leave one of the other 2 defenders free on the short puckouts, but certainly not Barry Nash or any of that half back line. So for Tipperary to press up and make sure that doesn't happen, you're going to leave space at the other side. You're probably going to have to accept that you'll give up 4 or 5 goal opportunities.
Yeah.
And are Limerick going to miss them?
Yeah, but like there is an element of, there's it's a bit kamikaze in a way, like, because, you kind of almost have to speculate to accumulate almost. You have to take the chances to try and create chances for yourself. You're going to leave some chances at the other end. That's why I think, like, yeah, Limerick will go for the throat if they get, like, can they hit 2 or 3 goals this weekend? If they hit 2 or 3 goals, they're going to win. But here's the man that knows all about all the rumours that are circulating around Limerick now, and I'd say he can give us the starting 15 mark.
How you doing, lads?
All good.
First thing anyway, lads, is I know absolutely nothing about what's going on. Any bit of information or nuggets of information, I'd love to get them, but at the moment, your guess is as good as mine anyway as to what Limerick will start with,
Hey, just a quick one on that. Like, things have changed a good bit since you were playing, Mark. Like, Are you happy that your inter-county career was immune from social media rumors and all sorts of wild stuff flying around? Like, it's kind of a bit mad. Like, someone puts out something on social media and it almost spreads and it becomes fact almost to some people,
Yeah, no. To be fair, I suppose it was there in our time as well, bar the social media aspect. They're always like, we went through a barren patch there for a while and weren't very successful. So there was a lot of rumor, innuendo, all of that kind of stuff at the time. But obviously now with the element of social media, that accelerates the rumor mill, and it goes far and wide very, very quickly. So I suppose the pace at which these rumors go around is a lot quicker now. But they was there in our time as well. There always seemed to be some reason other than the main reason why we weren't winning things, which is we just weren't good enough. But there always seemed to be some other reason, and that seems to be the case now as well. Like one a defeat against probably Clare, our nearest and dearest rivals, and the rumor mill goes into overdrive. But I'm just led to believe that training is going fairly well, and that Limerick are ready for Sunday.
Yeah, it's only 3 or 4 weeks since Limerick looked so good in the league, beating Tipp in the semi-final, that third quarter where they blew Tipp out of the water. And then obviously the league final, they dismissed Kilkenny with minimal fuss. I mean, things haven't gone that bad in the meantime. They've won a game and they've lost another by a point, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I was in backstage there when you were talking away there. I suppose
you're in the green room.
The green room, that's it. Green room. Yeah. So basically, look, they were impressive. Looked like they were ticking all the boxes. But like, I suppose if you look back to last year, the teams that caused Limerick trouble were Clare in the Munster final, could have won the game, and the All-Ireland final as well. Like, Kilkenny caused them big trouble as well. Obviously, Galway in the semi-final as well, but maybe for different reasons. But certainly Kilkenny and Clare pushed up on them, and that's what we've seen from Waterford this year and from Clare as well in the second game. They've pushed up, which is has asked different questions of Limerick, and to be fair, they kind of haven't answered them yet. I'm assuming and I'm hoping that they will have the answers maybe on Sunday, regardless of the result, just in terms of approaching the game and how best to get by that press. I think there definitely is an opportunity to definitely go more direct. I mean, if you look at the Clare game, sometimes there was huge space in front of Aaron Gillan and Seamus Flanagan, and a lot of the time they just opted not to go with it, and they still tried to go through the lines. Like, you play what you see in front of you. I know they're used to going through the lines for the last 4 or 5 years, but I think there definitely was an opportunity against Clare to get that ball in quickly in front of their full forward line, which they neglected to take a lot of the time. So, assuming that Tipperary will do something similar, I'd like to see them maybe go a little bit more direct on Sunday.
There's a comment in here from Raymond Gilbourne saying, "Love Mark on TG Carr. Can you ask him to give us an Uber and a Goppel, please?"
Over the gapple, yeah. It's a bit like that's a bit like Buff Egan, you know. You see some of the lads now; they're in the gym all the time, and jeepers, I'll tell you, I wouldn't like to be marking some of these guys, but they've got the strength of however many horses anyway.
Yeah, he's a stallion, man.
He's a stallion, man. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So there's some of them phenomenal athletes nowadays playing the game. It's great to see, and the game is really going from strength to strength, I think, you know.
Does it worry you at all, Mark, that the likes of Declan Hannon had to come off the first day? Then you also had Cian Lynch coming off, Sean Finn getting injured, of course, as well. He's out for the season. Is there any kind of worry of miles on the clock, same group, a lot of the same guys on the pitch over the last 5 years?
Well, I'm not sure about a worry, but it definitely is a question mark. And it's an obstacle that they'll just have to prove to themselves, I suppose, in the public, that it's not a factor. But certainly that question is there. I think Sean Finn is going to be a big loss. Like, absolutely fantastic cornerback, great man marker. But I think on top of that, his distribution is fantastic. Declan as well. I mean, he's a vital cog in that in that back line as well. He reads the play so well, but his distribution is what marks him out as different to the other centre backs. He's a fantastic distributor of the ball. Cian Lynch hasn't really been himself since he came back from injury. So like, you'll be looking for a big performance from Cian, but it's very difficult. Like, Cian had horrific injuries there over the last couple of years, and it's very difficult to come back straight away. So it might take him a little bit of time to settle back into this thing. But you'd be hoping that by the time he does hit his groove, that Limerick are still in the championship.
Yeah,
but yeah, those questions are there, definitely, no doubt about it, and it's going to be interesting to see how they fare on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see it properly on your screen there, but Mark, are there any matchups that you would be interested in, or anything that you think might be slightly different to how I have it here?
It'll be something similar to that, I'd say. Like, again, the big question mark from a Tipp point of view, and I know Liam Cahill is very direct, a lot of energy. Can they afford to really push up? Like, do they have the legs at the back? That's the big question I'd have about Tipperary. I mean, you look at Declan Dalton's goal against, when they played Cork. Like, in fairness to Declan, he's not a sprinter, and showed a clean pair of heels there to a number of Tipperary defenders. So if Tipp are going to go with that, it's going to be fairly high risk. And the flip side then, from a Limerick point of view, is that if that is the kind of shape of the team there, as you have it on screen there, they got to get that ball in fast into that full forward line, because that kind of a setup suits a full forward line if they can get the ball in nice and fast, and maybe diagonal as well, decent ball into them. So it's going to be a big question as to whether Tipp have the gas to kind of live with that. On the flip side then, do Limerick have the pace to exploit that kind of a setup? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, Tipp will get, I think Alan Tyne in the middle of the field has been fantastic. William O'Donoghue has a huge job to do there. He was brilliant down in Park Equive the last day. So they'll get their share of scores. I think Noel McGrath will try and dictate the play. I think it's up to Limerick to make sure that he works hard and really works him as hard as they can. But like Tipp have some fantastic hurlers inside then. Like Jake Morris is probably due a big game against Limerick. And I think he'll need a big game on Sunday. So, there's a lot of ifs, ands, buts and maybes. But certainly that shape, I think it would be, I think, in Limerick's best interests. Obviously, to play it as you see it, give it to the loose man. But if it's on inside, give it in. And I think there's scores to be got then.
Michael?
Tynan and O'Donoghue is going to be spicy, isn't it? Probably again before a ball is thrown in, I'd say. Yeah,
two excellent players, really, really high energy players. I think Alan Tynan has brought a real element of graft there to the Tipperary midfield. He's very direct. And in fairness to him, like, I wouldn't have, I suppose, from the limited amount of times I've seen him in the league, I wouldn't have seen him as a kind of a scorer. But the last day in Cork, he kind of surprised me with the scores. He got some fantastic scores. The one over by the old uncovered stand there in the first half was a fantastic score. I think it was a ball over the top from Noel McGrath. But like, he's really impressed me. He's really added a lot of energy to that Tipperary midfield, and he kind of allows Noel McGrath to do what Noel likes. To kind of take a step back, play the game at his own pace, dictate it, and pick out these passes. So there's there's some really positive things in Tipperary. I like the way that they're playing at real pace now and tempo. They probably have a little bit more legs in the team, especially up front, if you compare them to last year. And they've real width as well in terms of their use of the ball. Like they're using the whole width of the field as well as the depth of the field as well. So they'll ask serious questions of Limerick. So again, it'll be interesting to see what way Limerick react. I think in terms of if they do push up on them, will they still try and do the same thing, or will they be a bit more direct? And there's also different questions maybe asked of Limerick, especially around the half back line, in that I suppose the system they've had for the last few years is a lot of the time their midfielders have been doing all their defending for them. But when teams push up on you, it's up to you, to man up and do the defending as well as using the ball as well. So they're the question marks that will be there on Sunday.
Shane, just a quick one to throw at you. Who do you see Seamus Kennedy picking up? Is he a Hegarty if he starts potentially?
Yeah, I would have thought so. Well, like him or Morrissey, they're both brilliant athletes and they can both run all day and they can both score. So I would imagine he'll be on one of the two, because otherwise you're going to be putting a pace mismatch or an athleticism mismatch. Like that's one of the troubling things for Tipperary is we sort of run out of a mismatch in terms of dealing with that Limerick athleticism eventually. And you're nearly gambling on, well, hopefully Cian Lynch isn't right so we can get away with it on him. But like the goalkeeping, obviously Nicky Quaid has the experience. He's done it on all the big days. That's a bit of an advantage for Limerick. And then also the free taker. With Jason Ford out, there's a huge amount of pressure on Gearóid O'Connor. Mark. Like, I mean, surely those are two massive advantages for Limerick.
Yeah, I think to be fair now against Cork, right? If you're only surmising as to what would have happened, but I've absolutely no doubt if Jason Ford was on the team, you're looking at a 9-10 point victory for Tipp, because really? the frees they missed were vital frees at vital times just to keep that cushion, and I think they probably did play a lot better than Cork. Outside of the first 10 and the last 10 minutes, Cork just managed to hang in there. And then when the game became stretched and loose and open in the last 10 minutes and, players were gassing out, that's when Cork are dangerous. But I think like if that gap was there, I don't think, I couldn't have seen any way for Cork to win that game, because Tipp really bossed that second half. Aside from the first quarter, I think they were in control of that game. But part of the element why Tipp or Cork came back into it was that miss frees, and it was difficult for a rookie like Gearóid coming in there and taking those frees. It's his first championship campaign, and Jason Ford is such a fantastic marksman. Like I think he was a huge loss, and I think it's difficult on Gearóid, but you know what? It's probably a lot more suitable going into a game knowing you're going to take them. Which he does know, presuming he's starting on Sunday, and he'll have been doing his bit of practice over the last few weeks. But it is a massive factor, all right, because certainly Jason Ford, I think, is probably the best free taker in the country. He's up around, himself and TJ Reid, they're up around 10 out of 10. They're really, really good. So that's a loss for Tipperary, no doubt about it. And, from play as well, he'll pick up his couple of scores as well. But Gearóid has been doing fantastic in the half-forward line there as well. He's a big man. He's mobile as well for a big man. He's a good striker as well. So, but certainly free-taking-wise, Jason Ford is a big loss, yeah. Now, the other point you referred to there as well, Shane.
What's that? Oh, Nicky Quaid.
Yeah, well, Nicky Quaid hasn't been as good on the puckouts this year, basically because, like, most teams aren't dropping off. They're pressing right up, so his options aren't as plentiful. So, and it's nothing got to do with Nicky Quaid or anything like that. It's just that, their teams are going more man-on-man, and those pockets of space aren't there. So, what they did last year when Kilkenny pushed up on them was they bunched and broke a lot. So maybe you might see something like that if Tipperary do press up. But, and again, they mightn't press up. They might see, right, who's Nicky going to go for if they drop off a little bit, and nobody's sure exactly what the lineup of the full back line will be. And they might decide to go with maybe one or two and maybe bank on the fact that their distribution won't be as good as Sean Finn's, which it won't be, so interesting.
You were talking about one Gearóid there, but what about the other Gearóid Hegarty, who there's much talk about this week? Do you see it as simple as he starts and potentially proves a point and gets a big reaction and a massive boost in his performance based on what we've seen so far this year?
Yeah, well, I'd say, to be fair to Gearóid, and he'd probably be first to admit it himself, the few times I've seen Gearóid, he hasn't been at the levels he was over the last few years. I think he'd be first to admit that himself. I assume that the team is based on what's going on in training. So I mean, if there has been an improvement in Garrod's performance, I've no doubt he will start and be given an opportunity to prove himself. But you know, I mean, there is motivation there for Garrod now. There's no doubt about that. And you know, if Garrod gets back to the levels we know he's capable of, well, he's another match winner for Cork, or for Limerick. And if you look at the Limerick team over the last few days, like you'd have Keane probably below par, Garrod was below par in the league final and against Waterford as well. So if you introduce those two back to form, I think they're a different outfit. And having said all of that, even against Clare, whereas they didn't win the game, they still were in the pocket of the ball of winning the game. So they're not that far off, you know.
I'm just thinking, Mark, as an Adair man and Declan Hannon being the same club, how young was he when you realised, oh, we've got a player here?
Well, very young, I suppose. You know, there was a Crappin and Dare came through. I think they were the last team from Adair to win the Leader Cup, which would be the primary schools competition in Limerick. And Declan would have been on it, and John Fitzgibbon, and there was a good crop. The likes of Sean Kelly was there as well, who played minor with Limerick, but he did a couple of cruciates. So unfortunately, he never made it through. But yeah, he was, you know, an outstanding underage team at that stage. And I remember, I think they beat Patrickswell in an under-14 county final. And, you know, Declan was outstanding. Who did they beat? An under-16 final inside the Gaelic grounds as well. Can't remember who it was. But Declan, again, outstanding that day. And Shane Fitzgibbon was over the team, who was a former Limerick hurler as well. So you could see, like, from a long way off, he was a really outstanding prospect. And he came on the senior team very, very early then. I think he was only 17, and we won a championship and narrowly beat by Newtown Shandrum down in Park Equive. Then I think he scored something like 112 or something like that. So, you know, it was patently obvious like that he was going to make it, and you know, he's gone on to really shine over the last few years.
Yeah, because like he had a tough day in 2013, you know, the semi-final against Clare. He missed a few frees, and he referenced that afterwards when they did win the All-Ireland. Like, you know, I mean, when that happened, geez, you couldn't quite foresee what happened in the next number of years then.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, he managed it very well. It was I suppose, a harrowing experience for any young fella, you know, to have the day that he did have. But I think, to be fair, managed it very well, came from it, and just shows the character that's in Declan. Like, he's a fairly laid back fella anyway, but that did hurt, and that did take a bit out of him, all right. But I think John Kiley as well, and you know, the backroom team and all that. You know, we won't go into names, but they certainly have helped Declan, because you know, I think once Declan is happy in himself and confident, you know, he's a very, very good player and a very, very important player for Limerick. And you know, maybe different questions asked of Declan this year, but it's an opportunity for him to go on and prove that he can answer those questions. You know, because it's probably more of a different role maybe to what Declan has had over the last few years. It maybe it will be maybe I suppose a straightforward centre-back role now of blocking the middle and still doing your hurling. Whereas a lot of the time over the last few years, Declan has been operating in possession maybe as a +1, you know. But, you know, it's probably a little bit different this year because teams are really pushing up in Limerick, as you've seen over the last couple of games.
And so, of the players this weekend, who do you see stepping up for? Like, I'm even looking at the scores that Limerick have from play this year. Galan has just 3 points. Seamus Flanagan has 3-2. And after that, you're looking at Morrissey with 5 and Diarmuid Burns with all 3. So it's not like there's a selection of lads who are on fire. Tipp have maybe a little bit more. Jake Morris 2-7, Garrod O'Connor 1-2 only, Mark Keogh 1-4, and Jason Ford's gone, obviously. So, like, it's actually, you know, I'm finding it difficult to pick a clear kind of guy who's going to take over this game.
Yeah, just looking at the games, like, the only thing is, like, Tipp do have a real goal threat. And any team that Liam Khan is manager of, they seem to really go for the jugular. So it would be important that, like, Limerick, in as much as possible, try and keep a clean sheet. And they managed to do very well in the league match, you know, with much of the same personnel from Tipp that will be playing on Sunday. So I think from a Tipp perspective, it's really important the younger lads step up that you just mentioned there. I think Jake Morris has to have a good game for Tipp. I think most games I've seen him against Limerick now, he hasn't been great. He was good the last day. I'm not sure who they're going to start instead of Jason Ford, but I think Mark Keogh is probably, you know, he was good the last day. He has gas as well, like, and you know, he's around a couple of years now, so if he gets the nod, like someone like him, it's you know, it's a big game for him. And the road there centre forward. Look, it's crucial, I think, for Tipp as well that that middle channel, that if they get any opportunity at all, that they attack that middle channel and cause problems for Limerick. I think from a Limerick perspective, I think, sometimes I was watching the match there last day, and as I referenced there a while ago, like there was big space for the Limerick's full forward line, and Kyle and Diarmid were more conscious. Maybe it's because they're programmed in playing that way of going through the lines, or Kyle was trying to go down the wing all the time, where sometimes it was just the wing was blocked, turn back onto your right hand side, or in Diarmid's pace your left hand side, hit the ball off the back foot into that 70 yards, pocket of space that was there time and time again. But they opted, or maybe they're programmed into not doing it. But I think that really would open up that defence, or most defences who do push up. Like, I think it's key, like when a team pushes up, just turn back, hit it off your back foot and drill it into that space, and that's where the opportunities will arise. Like, but it'll be just interesting to see, will they, or have they worked on that, like, because in fairness to the lads John Kiley and the lads and Sean O'Donnell especially, and Paul Kinner, they're very, very sharp. I'm assuming that they will have seen that.
We'll have to put the next on the block here. I think Limerick have the more proven team. They're a wounded animal. It's do or die at this stage for them. And it could be if Cork win in Clare. I think you have to go for Limerick to win this game.
I'd be the same. I think 3 or 4. The question I put to you along with that, Mark, is do you think Limerick can win? And if they do win this weekend, what do you see the rest of the season looking like? Is this like a game that is like a release valve of they just start going into themselves and start playing after this if they can get a result?
I think Limerick's need is greater, and I think that was a factor against Clare. I think Clare went into the last game against Limerick knowing that they had to win. Simple as that. So I think Limerick have to win this, or else, like as you say, if results go against them, and Cork win, if they lose, they're out of the championship. So I think maybe that's a factor. They certainly won't want for hunger, but like Tipperary in their home patch, and I think, in fairness, they've lost the last few games against Limerick in the championship. I think for Tipperary to be seen as serious contenders, they're going to have to put in a performance against Limerick on Sunday. But I just feel that just Limerick have maybe a little bit more at this juncture. I think Tipp are coming all right. I think they, their style of play, their use of the ball has improved. There's more energy about them. When they get the chance, they're more direct now, and they're using the whole field, which is great. But I just feel Limerick, the need is greater. I think they're hurting after the last day. I think they know that they have to really get the show on the road with a good performance on Sunday. So I just give them the nod, but I don't think there will be a whole lot in it, and I think Limerick will be asked serious questions before they do come out of it.
I think it's going to be hell, fire, brimstone, whatever you associate with The Undertaker in the WWE.
Yeah. Kane, actually, that is. Yeah.
Was it?
I think Mark was nearly one of the first scoring wing backs, wasn't he? I'm just thinking back in his career. He was one of the first scoring wing backs. He nearly always put over a pint in most games. I think I hope Tipp really throw it down to Limerick, but yeah, you'd be very reluctant to write Limerick off. Basically, you just expect a bit of a bounce, don't you? I'd imagine so.
Yeah, but at the same time, if they're ever going to be vulnerable, this should be the time. And is there anything, like, I don't really think I asked you too much about, these teams on the tactic board. Again, like Tipperary might withdraw Dan McCormick, and they might have the likes of Rowan and Matter sitting there or whatever. But like, do you think that would be disastrous from a Tipp point of view if they did that?
No, I don't think so necessarily. Dan gave us one of his best performances in a Tipp shirt the last day. He's playing really well this year. I think I've never hidden my admiration for Will O'Donoghue, and I think if he can hit top gear, if he can boss the game, if he can make those 4 or 5 big plays, if he gets that fist pumping, Limerick will be hard bet. But if the likes of him is kind of kept quiet, if he's trying to plug a hole for Hannon more often than not and not able to get in and get involved in a lot of play, Limerick could be in a bit of bother. I just expect things to go up a gear. I expect a lot of the big players, not being smart, I still think Gerard Hegarty will win an All-Star this year. Even though he's 2 games so far sent off, he's barely played a combined game all told across the 2 games, but I still think he could easily end up with an All-Star and probably will. And I would be expecting him to really put the chest out with the weekend, expecting his body language to be a lot different as well. But it's fascinating. Like I expect Donoghue to go after Tynan to some extent as well. just based on that league final, like that he wound up getting a 1-match suspension out of that as well. So like that'll be really interesting as well. I just think even the players been brought back to the 45 now for the throw-in just leaves the 4 players even more kind of isolated. It makes it even juicier almost now, doesn't it?
It does indeed. And I see River Power is saying here that British flag up in the top corner, you know, when I put up the map, is fair annoying. Well, unfortunately, I don't own the website. I can't change what structure they have. And it's obviously on a rugby field here. So we're just kind of working on what we have so we can display it on the screen. But this man here, Peter Casey, I think he's going to be that's a key matchup. You'd imagine Johnny Ryan, like the league semi-final, he'll be on him again. Seamus Kennedy's had a massive year for Tipperary. He's been an all-star form as far as I'm concerned. But the reason I have Brian O'Mara on Keane Lynch here is even just from the Fitzgibbon Cup a couple of years ago, and maybe Lynch wasn't at 100%, but Brian O'Mara had a very good game on him and turned him over a couple of times. Like Barrett will have to make sure he doesn't get caught out in front of Gillan, you know, jumping on his back. And obviously, you know, he has that capacity now to score goals on site. Seamus Flanagan, he scored 3 goals already in this championship. Should have been sent off against Waterford, but like his form has been very, very good. And then it's like, can Conor Stakelum, Alan Tynan, McCormack, can all of these lads put in the sort of physical 70 minutes that Tipperary will require to get a result here? Like, I'm not ruling out Tipperary from winning this game. I just feel like it's going to be probably a puck of a ball. Tipperary will have to, I suppose, weather that third quarter that they really have struggled with the last couple of years. But I think you just can't go against Limerick in this, even though I think Tipp won't be that far off.
No, there's not enough. I know they were beaten the last day, but like, they're going to have to be beaten a couple of times before you're going against them anyway, confidently, aren't you? Realistically.